So we had a couple of people that submitted some openers. John, you want to break this first one down for us?
Yeah. So, I mean, look, there's all sorts of different ways to create openers here, but this one, James and I were talking about this one before we got on here. I'm a little in the middle of it, right? So this person talks about, hi, look, I can understand where they're going with this as far as they're saying I'm important too. A lot of you don't want to put yourself at a different level than the people that you're reaching out to, because you never want to beg for somebody's time or anything like that. But this one a little bit leery of, right? Because he says, I've not got too long right now, but are you free for a minute? I promise I'm going to keep this brief. So it's a little weird. I'm going to say on this one, I would try it. I would try it.
I would A/B test the shit.
Yeah, I would test this because this is the thing where it might not be my style, but it might work for this person, because there is a pattern interrupt to this. For instance, when they're calling and saying, hey, I don't have time right now, but are you free for a minute, right? It's like, wait a minute, you called me. How do you not have time? So I could see it being something where it would get me to pause for a second and have that pattern interrupt and get me to stay on the phone for a little bit to figure out who the hell is this kid. But I'm kind of in the middle of it. This is one I would put on I would absolutely test. I put this analogous to when Gong came out with the data of how have you been is the best intro. Remember that one?
I did see, and that data point was shocking to me because I always avoided how have you been. I thought it was too familiar.
Right. Well, and that's the thing. It's this pattern interrupts. And I got actually shredded for this, for putting this one on TikTok. But I said, look, I don't love it because it's a little bit of a bait and switch, or a little bit, hey, I'm pretending like I know you, but it's not. Because I used to say, hey, this is John Barrows. How you doing today? You know what I mean? That was always my go-to. Like, hey, this is John Barrows from JV Sales. How you doing today? Well, not here, but when I was at Thrive Networks. And that was just what I did. It wasn't because it was good. It was just, that was the only thing I knew. And I didn't think of the intros, right? So I didn't think of that 5 seconds. I just kind of had my thing. And I didn't care how these people really were doing. That's how I knew it was bad, because I wouldn't even wait for your response. I'd say something like, hey, thanks. Hi, this is John Barrows, JV Sales. How you doing today? And by the way, I was wondering if you could point me in the right direction. I wouldn't even wait for them to say, so instead of, hey, how you doing today? How have you been? That's a little bit more familiar. Again, I don't love it because I think it is on that edge of,
I think it's really useful if you've had a cold call with this person before that even lasted just a few minutes.
That's a different one.
And you can say, how have you been? And there is a familiarity there. And I feel like that would be the move. All right, this second one. Hi, this is usually get the curious response. And this is the if then, right? So this is what leaders try to do in their cold call coaching. They try to guess how people are going to respond, and they give you that go through. But go ahead, you got this.
So I don't get, so if John who, right? So walk me through the
approach. So hey, prospect, it's my name. I don't have very long right now. Are you free for a minute? I promise to keep things brief. Usually get the curious response here.
Oh.
If who, like if it's James who,
got it,
right? And then my name at company. Yeah, this is James with sellbetter.xyz. You've probably seen that we released. Maybe I'm a million miles off, but it looks like you're hiring salespeople over there, which usually means you need to provide onboarding and training, or you've got a certain goal that you're putting in front of these new people. And usually what comes next is some sort of onboarding and training service. And that's why I'm calling. Does this sound familiar to you? That's what's being suggested here. What do you think about that?
So I like this one, but the key to this one is relevance and doing your homework, right? So if you can come at me with typically VPs of sales or CEOs of sales training organizations are dealing with these problems and are looking for this type of result, does that sound even remotely familiar to you?
Yeah.
If you're spot on with those, yeah, you know what I mean? Hey, typically, and that word typically is a big one, right? Typically, we're talking with people like you who have these challenges. Now, that's a persona-driven approach, which I actually recommend. If you're going to make cold calls, by the way, do not sprinkle cold calls throughout the day, and do not just call anybody and everybody that's on your list. When you do like a power hour, call everybody that fits the exact same profile so you can get some momentum and you can have a chance with this approach. Because if I'm calling a VP of sales in the SaaS industry, a director of IT in the manufacturing industry, a CMO in the healthcare industry, and you pick up, I have to be generic. I have to be like, hi, this is John Barrows, we're the leading provider of. But if I call every VP of sales in SaaS and I have what their challenges are, what their problems, maybe even a case study and a few questions that are relevant to them, I can pull this off, but it has to do with your homework. So one more piece that I'll say on this one is, I like the Chris Voss almost negative where, hey, am I a million miles off, right? Is this even remotely from what you're trying to do is you're pushing to the boards, right? To say, Well, you're not a million miles off. Like Chris Wassel asked the question, would it be ridiculous of me to ask you to whatever? And usually the answer to that is, well, no, it's not ridiculous.
Yeah.
And when somebody says no, they actually are more open to engaging with you after they say that because they feel more in control.
It's the answer before the answer.
Exactly. So with this one, hey, am I a million miles off here? Is this even remotely familiar to you?
Yeah.
It's like, well, yeah, it's remotely from. So you're kind of getting that, like, okay, where do you want to go with this?
So, again, the answer before the answer. Is it okay? It borderlines permission-based.
Yeah.
For those of you that don't know permission-based, it's when you ask permission to keep speaking. Hey, do you have a second? That's permission-based, right? Okay, so the other possible response that's noted here is when they say, I promise to keep things brief, and they say, well, what's this about?
Yeah.
This is where you can insert the reason for my call. Right? It looks like you're doing this, which means X, and people use this to do that, right? That's sort of the way that flows.
Yeah, I think people take cold calling too seriously. I really do. This is literally, what is the worst thing that could happen to you, right? They hang up. Actually, here's the worst thing that could happen to you, and this is if you really suck, is you piss them off so hard that they call your boss and rat you out. Like that's happened to me a couple of times.
I have something worse that happened to me.
All right,
I was served with a cease and desist order.
Damn. I've never been that aggressive. But it's about energy. When I said earlier about momentum, this is why you should stand up, for instance, when you're making your cold calls, because that energy comes through. If you're in a bad mood, send emails. I promise you that whole cheesy smile and dial thing, it actually works. I had a kid who used to work for me at Thrive. And when I tell you right now, when this kid was in a good mood, I would sit there and I would take notes. Listen, my office was open. He'd be right there. And I'd be like, holy shit, this kid's on fucking wheel, right? But when he was in a bad mood, he almost offended every person he talked to. And so I no joke. I did this. I brought a mirror into his office and I put it in his desk. And I said, look, Mike, if you're having a good day, look in this mirror. And if you're genuinely having a good day, I want you on the phones all day long. But if you're having a bad day, don't make one call. I want you to only send emails. And he was like, all right. And guess what? He segmented out. So this is why it's cool to have Zoom sessions where your friends are where your colleagues are on the call with you and you're making calls, maybe put it on mute. And then you come off every 15 minutes to chat about the train wreck that you just had. Have some fun with this. Don't take this too seriously.
It's not supposed to be taken seriously. Remember that this is not a sales call. It's a cold call. Those aren't the same. Sales calls come later. Cold calls are for that attention from somebody that didn't expect to give you any today. And if you can earn that conversation, you can create interest. That's what cold calls are about.
Check out JB Floyd, by the way.
JB Floyd, I don't look at them as cold calls. They're friends I haven't met yet. That's my jam. That is my whole life. JB. I think this is another JB that I could welcome into our fold of JBs. We have quite a few. All right, let's talk about homework. I'm going to give you 3 places to stop on somebody's LinkedIn profile before you dial their phone number. Look at their profile picture. Do they look like this? That's me. I'm super approachable. Approach them as if they're approachable. Or do they look like this? They're not approachable. Business all day with them. Be quick, be curt, be serious with them. The profile picture will tell you a lot. Look at their about page. What's their love language? Do they talk in data, numbers, math, KPIs, goals, metrics? You should talk to them like that when you talk to them. That's what you're calling about. Or do they say things like motivational and wonderful and awesome and fantastic? These people care about how you make them feel. So you can adjust your approach that way. And then finally, look at their job description on their LinkedIn profile. If they copied and pasted from the company's LinkedIn profile, it's probably not very useful. But if they actually took the time to write what they care about, guess what you're calling about? That stuff. That's the stuff you're calling about. This process takes you a grand total of 2, maybe 3 minutes.
Yeah. And I think this is the whole point of this is having that reason of why you're reaching out. So a little cheat code I have for what James talked about as far as knowing the personality and the words to use. And if somebody could throw this in the chat, crystalknows.com, CRYSTALKNOWS. It gives you a disc profile on everybody you're connected to. And what that does is it tells you, are they direct? Are they a little bit more fluffy? Do they like facts? Do they like, so you can actually adjust your style to the person you're calling, which is extremely important. Because if you think your style is going to resonate with everybody out there, it's not. There's a study out there called neurolinguistic programming, where it talks about there's 3 types of communicators: visual, auditory, and kinesthetic, and they all communicate differently. And if you don't understand that, you're going to put yourself at a disadvantage. But going back to knowing like the research, two approaches here. One is you look for triggers, like something you can reference, and that could be they're hiring people, they said something on a post that got your attention, their company's going through some sort of growth phase or whatever that is, and you can tie your solution to that. That's if you have a little bit of extra time to spend 2 to 5 minutes on a website poking around a little bit here, okay? But the other approach is being relevant. You don't have to be personalized, but you absolutely have to be relevant. So for instance, if you're calling VPs of sales, you need to understand, going back to that, one of the examples that we use there, you need to know what VPs of sales go through. You need to know what their challenges are. You need to know what some of the things that your solution provides specifically for that person, not just in general. So this is why it's so important to do that little bit of homework beforehand, to have a relevant or personalized thing to say when you say the reason for my call today is. I'll give you a quick example. Relevance. The reason for my call today is we're working with other VPs of sales who are typically dealing with these challenges. We show them how to solve them. Is that something worth talking about, right? Personalized. Hi, the reason for my call today, I was on your website. I noticed you're hiring a whole bunch of SDRs right now, and I'm curious how you're getting them onboarded, because our training really helps SDRs get onboarded and ramped quickly out of boot camp. Thought it'd be worth a conversation. So see the nuance there? This one I had to do a little bit of homework for, but not a lot. This one, I could just be relevant and call 50 people with that same message. So that's how you need to at least do some homework. But I beg you, do not take the stupid pitch that your company has given you, that marketing's given you, and say it to everybody and anybody in your database. That is a recipe for disaster, and it's why our connect and conversion ratios are so low.